I don't know why my camera is making me look yellow. Howdy doodly, welcome to I Read Books and Stuff. I'm your host Jonah, and today I'm doing my Booktube-A-Thon wrap-up. I only did one daily update, this Booktube-A-Thon, just because I didn't really have a lot to say, and the other days I just pretty much had, I read this much down, because I wanted to save all my feelings and stuff for the actual Booktube-A-Thon. But without further ado, here we go. And also, I'm still not using my camera, even though I probably should, but I have a big gigabyte thing that helps me, that films more than 1 minute of video at a time, but I lost it. So I only have a little memory card that lets me record up to 1 minute at a time, and I do not want to deal with that. So I'm just going to do it on my camera that looks like somebody peed on my room. So much fun. And my teeth look like corn kernels, even though they're porcelain. Okay, so the first book I read, I actually read at midnight, and I read it without letting go of it. What? And that's Infernal Devices, Clockwork Angel, the manga by Cassandra Clare, art by Hayakiyoung by and oh, the lighting's better. Hooray. And obviously, I love the Infernal Devices trilogy. It's one of my favorite books of all. They're one of my favorite books of all time. But I didn't think that it translated very well into manga. I thought it just came out very talkative. It didn't. The story didn't compel me as much as it did whenever I was actually reading the book. So if you're planning on like getting into this trilogy, I really recommend that you read the books and you don't get the manga. It's the actual books are just so much better than the manga. It didn't interest me as much. The next book I read, I actually had to read for school. The next book I read, I actually had to read for school, and that's The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I didn't really love this either. I thought that it was kind of nonsensical, and it wasn't like nonsensical in a good way, like Alice in Wonderland. Like Alice in Wonderland, the way that Alice in Wonderland is one of my favorite books of all time, and Alice in Wonderland, you can tell that nonsensicality helped the plot just because it was like it was nonsense done well, and I felt like it really worked with Alice in Wonderland. But in this one, I wanted more of a story, like the feeling of the book and like all the creatures and stuff. Like it didn't really work because like Alice in Wonderland, I don't really recall it being that detailed. I recall it just being like random, and I don't know, I feel like I couldn't tell if I wanted to be more like Alice in Wonderland or more like, well, Game of Thrones came out way after this, but more something along in the vein of Game of Thrones. And I felt like the characters and the plot were horribly underdeveloped, and I felt like everything just could have used some fleshing out, and I felt like nothing did get fleshed out. So I was entertained while reading it just because I thought it was very much an enchanting tale, but I gave this 3 out of 5. And I think I gave the Clockwork Angel manga 3 out of 5 too. The next book I read was the only book that didn't get a 3 out of 5, and that's Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging by Louise Bredesen. And this got a 4 out of 5 because I loved it. I thought it was so funny. I adore Georgia. I loved the story, even though the plot itself was not my favorite. I thought that I felt like the author focused more on like the substance and less on what it was built on, and I felt like the supporting characters were kind of yeah, and obviously it's hard to do that it's hard to really flesh out the supporting characters in a diary, so well, in a story that's told in a diary format, so I understood why the author seemed to be struggling with it. But and honestly, the only characters that I knew by the end of the story, not including, like, I didn't Like the only characters that I thought were really memorable were Georgia, Robbie, Angus, and Jazz. I thought those were the and Libby. I felt like those were the only characters that really stood out, and all of them were excellently written, but the rest of them not so much. But I just that didn't really bother me, just because if I'm enjoying a book a lot, the technicalities of the stuff like that, like if the characters are fleshed out and stuff like that, if I'm really enjoying what I'm reading, I don't pay attention to that, so I don't really judge it harshly. So I still love this book, and I gave it 4 out of 5. The final book that I read was another 3-star, and that was A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. And this is a classic, and I thought this was going to be one of my favorites, because I don't know why, it just seemed very much up my alley. And initially, whenever I finished it, I absolutely loved it. And then, like, after a couple days, I watched the movie, but that didn't really have anything to do with my rating. And I felt like it was just kind of, it was very forgettable. Like, nothing stayed with me. Like everybody said that this book haunts you and stuff like that. It didn't haunt me at all. I felt like it started out very strong when it was just Alex and his original Drew just hanging around doing stuff, and I really liked the theme that it set up, and then it got very forgettable. It didn't really stick out in my mind as a great read. And I don't really remember myself like enjoying it as much as I was hoping. I just kind of like reading it, and like I remember kind of wanting to put it down and get to the next thing, but I was entertained, but not. It's hard to describe my feelings for this book because I didn't hate it, I didn't like it. Well, I did like it, but I gave it a 3 out of 5. So in total, I read 4 books, and all but one were 3 out of 5. So Booktube-A-Thon this year wasn't the best for me. Like it had nothing to do with how it was set up or anything, but just like I only read 4 books out of 7, which is actually 4 out of 7 isn't bad, but like I don't really judge based on how many books I read. I judge more on how many of the books I enjoyed, and 3 out of 4 of them being 3 stars isn't good. So I'm not as satisfied with Booktube-A-Thon as I was last year, because I think I enjoyed most of the books I read, but yeah, so that was my Booktube-A-Thon wrap up. Let me know how you guys did in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.